In Britain's not too distant past, our relationship with food was such that for most people going for a meal outside of the home was not something done for pleasure.
This is one of the new British restaurants. They're starting them all over the country to feed people during wartime, and do they feed you?
But the dining out experience was about to be transformed. We'd soon get into the habit of eating out, but first we needed quite a bit of help and encouragement.
The only spaghetti we knew was like baked beansy stuff, in a tin and tomato sauce.
And it wasn't just the spaghetti that changed. Migrants from Italy, China and the Indian subcontinent helped us develop a taste for eating out, and in the process created meals that we've come to call our own. Leaving their home countries with the hope of starting a new life, and arriving in Britain with few options, many opened restaurants.
As an immigrant, you have no choice. You slightly have to take what you get. You've got to carve out your own niche.
They brought with them new ways of dining, and they taught us how a meal out could be something not to endure, but to enjoy. These restaurants helped to democratise the dining out experience by making a meal out accessible, inexpensive and a touch exotic.
And you just sat there and quaked and hoped that you ordered the right thing. And it was pretty red hot. It was really brilliant.
And they built on the British culinary tradition of fusing tastes from elsewhere to spice up the often dull traditional cuisine.
If you look at our food culture, since time immemorial, we've begged, borrowed, stolen, used, adapted foods from all over the world.
This is the story of how Britain's food migrants helped us discover the joys of eating out. The showbiz version of chopsticks and chop suey was a world apart from the real story. Many migrants from Hong Kong followed in the footsteps of the Italians in Wales, opening restaurants in working-class suburbs and towns. Lily Kwok set up her restaurant in 1950 just outside Manchester. It was one of the first of its kind.
There's a famous quote that says, "The journey of 1,000 miles starts with one step." And it really started with her in Hong Kong, working for an English family. And after post-war Britain, the English family wanted to come back. The lady that she looked after and cared for passed away, left a small inheritance for her. And then from there, she used that money to start her own business. She set it in Middleton in the 1950s. And they initially thought she was Japanese, so they boycotted her first restaurant, the Lung Fung, because they thought that she was going to poison their food. My grandmother, being entrepreneurial and determined to succeed, hired a local lady called Mavis. And it was Mavis that helped to bridge the gap and bring locals to come and try the food. They were won over by the spices, by the tastes, by the whole experience of dining out.
Lily's initial business, the Lung Fung Cafe, was modest by today's standards.
My grandmother's restaurant in the 1950s was a very basic restaurant with, white walls, tables and chairs. I think expectations were quite low, so it didn't matter that she had a very basic restaurant. Middleton is a working class area. You don't want to make it too posh and put your diners off. You've got to make it comfortable so that they feel welcome there. And that's exactly what Lung Fung was. She was obviously very entrepreneurial. And I think she went up to about 26 shops, which was amazing for a woman in the 50s to do that. She had so many regular customers who would order the same thing again and again that I don't think she even needed a menu at one point.
Some of those original customers still remember their introduction to Lily's food.
Well, the first time I went to Lung Fung's was with my friend on a Friday night, and he said, I'll take you for a good curry. And we went to this, Lung Fung's is like a Chinese restaurant. So we went in there, and it was flagged on the floor and all that. And she used to have a dish, a jug, with all the knives and forks in. So it was really like old-fashioned. After she'd been in a couple of years, they had a toilet put in, but it was right in the centre of the room. And if you was on the toilet, everyone could hear you.
Opening a Chinese restaurant during rationing posed its own problems.
When she first opened in the 1950s, obviously there is a limitation on what kind of foods is available. And she was very creative, so she would adapt. If there wasn't sugar, she'd put apples into the curry to sweeten things up. I know the curry used to change colour from green to yellow, depending on what was available. But, she managed to find the spices from somewhere and kept the customers really hooked on what she made.
Lily's culinary legacy is still evident today. 60 years on, her family continue to cook her curry.
My grandmother and my parents have had a massive influence on my life. In a former life, I used to be a lawyer. And so I've given that up to open up a restaurant with Lisa, who used to work in finance. So we have actually changed our paths quite significantly. To actually be able to make her dishes today keeps her memory alive.